for the work session of April 23rd, 2024. And sort of back where we left off, we have Assistant Village Manager Doug Willardson here to give us a U.S. Open plans update. Go ahead, Doug.
Thank you. I just wanted to point out what you mentioned earlier, that we do have information about the 24 U.S. Open on our website. So all the information that we will be covering tonight is already up there. So it should be in an easily digestible format for anyone who is interested in looking at it. So I will pull up this presentation.
Are we letting people on our email list or residents know about that?
We will.
We will, please do.
Yeah,
because-
we just want to make sure all the bugs were worked out first. So, but yes,
No problem.
I'll be notified of that. Okay, so this is many of you were at the NAC meeting the other day. These are pretty much the same slides, a few changes here and there, but not all of you were there. And also, I think it's important that the public, anyone who's listening and watching, is able to understand this. So I may not go in as much detail as we did at the NAC meeting, but if there are any questions, feel free to interrupt and we can dive into those. So parking is the most fun to talk about, so we'll start with that first. There is the red lot north of the village off of Highway 73. So anyone coming from north of the village, they're encouraging them to come to this area to park, to come down Murdochsville Road and into the village of Pinehurst and down to the harness track. South of the village, they have this lot on Sandpit Road in Pine Bluff that they're encouraging everyone to go to. They will all meet here at the harness track. The blue lot will come in this way and leave out going that way, and the red will come in and go out that way. So they have a very organized and systematic way for getting these shuttles in. Once people get off of the buses, they'll cross over here and enter into the main gates here on course 1 and enter into you can already see the things that they're setting up, the merchant tent and things right here on this hole. And this is the main corridor up to the course. Any questions? So that is how they're encouraging everyone in a car to get to the facility, to the U.S. Open. So anyone driving a golf cart, these are the different locations. So you can park here on the course number 5, hole 18 fairway, and then walk over the existing crosswalk on Highway 5 to enter into the course here.
That is golf cart parking only?
Golf cart parking only.
Okay, it's important.
Yep.
People who are watching, golf cart parking only.
So that is gate 10. Gate 8 is the one that we were talking about earlier, where near the clubhouse. Course number 1 down here, people can park here and then walk onto the course the same way the people getting off of the buses and cross over here on Morganton and go up to the concourse here and then up onto the number 2. And then course number 1. Course number 7 is over here. So you can park up here. Sorry, course number 7, this is where the rideshare drop-off is. So if anyone taking an Uber or a limousine, you'd get dropped off here and then get onto the course that way. And then this other green star here is the other drop-off point for parking golf carts, and you can enter through gate 5.
Let me make one comment. I think it would be good to put in writing there, ride sharing only.
Yes, so this is the entry.
Number 7.
At number 7 is ride share only.
Because if you just read it, it says park and walk.
Yeah. So yes, let's be very clear that
Okay.
you cannot park there and you can only be dropped off.
Okay.
We did have an email this past week about people living in Doral Woods, how they could get a golf cart to downtown.
Yes.
Jeff Batten, who knows everything in the village, he told me about this location here. This is Derby Drive. So someone from this neighborhood, rather than going out and coming all around Monticello, they could cut through the course and through these trees and come out on Derby Drive, and that'd be a much shorter route to get to Monticello and then up onto the golf cart parking.
Let's walk through the cut-through so we know what we're advising people to do.
Yeah. Yeah, so, I mean, anywhere in this neighborhood, you could cut across the course here, number one, and then this
Number
is
one,
Derby Drive. So next to this is the large track, the harness track. Over here, there's a cul-de-sac that you could get to that would save you some time rather than going around the whole neighborhood.
Just to be clear, course number one will not be closed in this period. There could be people playing golf there.
No, I think it's closed.
I do believe it's closed.
Is the resort closing down?
One of the holes is
Oh,
used
it's
for
more than
main
one.
I understand.
access.
They've already closed that down, so it's now a 16-hole
There's at
course
least
as
four
it is
closed.
now.
Yeah.
I think they're closing number.
I'd be
I think
surprised.
3 and 5 will be open. They're on the other side of.
Well,
number 5.
5 is actually closed as well because that's
5 is
golf cart
parking.
parking.
5 is cart parking.
Well, the 18th hole won't
Maybe,
be
yeah,
available.
so
let's
maybe
put it
they-
that way. But yeah, you can get to Monticello, then of course you have to go all the way across Monticello, cross over Route 5, and then cut back through course number 5 down to the 18th hole, of number 5, to park.
Yeah, well, there is the parking, if I can, yeah, right here. You can park here in a golf cart. The question was, could you get in a golf cart to the village core? That would take you a while, because you'd have to go through that Derby Drive, Derby Court, and then through these roads over here to somehow make it over into the village core via golf cart. There's other ways you could do it. You could take a car and park in one of our, the village green lot or our overflow parking lot too. Okay. Yeah, so we have talked about parking. I'll just skip these and go straight to the map. So the downtown business core is going to be 3-hour parking as well as the village green lot. All these other roads are closed to parking in the right-of-way unless it is a designated marked spot on the roadway already. So there's quite a few of those, so those will remain open. But we don't want people parking in the right-of-way because a lot of these are shuttle routes. We don't want them to get crowded, and we don't want, the downtown area to get congested with people parking here and walking over to the course. So this will be enforced. We have enforcement people lined up to do this from 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. As I mentioned earlier, we are going to have a shuttle during the day from 8:30 a.m. to 5 p.m. from this Rattlesnake Trail lot to the downtown. So
This is a Village of Pinehurst shuttle.
during the day, yes.
Yes.
Yep. So we're operating that, and it will be for overflow. So if the village lot gets full, then people need somewhere else to go. This is the place they can go and get a ride to downtown. And then in the evening, it will be from the community center or the Cannon Park area, and they will kind of take the same route to get there. And they'll be dropped off next to the Holly Inn and be able to walk downtown anywhere they want from there.
Are these, what vehicles are we using to provide the shuttle service? These are existing village-owned vehicles?
We've rented 8-person golf carts for the daytime, which should be plenty based on our experience in 2014. And in the evening, the USGA has turtle top vans, so similar to what our van is that we have at Parks and Rec. So just hold maybe 20-ish people.
You like me, because you and I have discussed this a little bit, to raise my question now or hold it for the
I
end?
have like in 2 slides.
Okay.
Nope, 1 slide. So, yeah, the issue that has been brought up is that someone that came off of the course and went to downtown, how do they get back to their car that's presumably parked at a satellite location? That is a difficult problem to solve. So the 3 options that we currently have is that you can go to the harness track and then take your car from your satellite lot and come downtown, park at Cannon, and then get a ride there. I agree that's not the most direct option, but that is the one that the USGA is providing, that they're trying to accommodate the need, and that's the best way they can do it. Otherwise, you can walk from the downtown area. It's a mile over to the harness track. Also not ideal, but that is, I mean, if you've been walking all day, what's another mile? And then also you could get a ride to your car and either call an Uber or a friend or something like that. So John and I have talked. He did mention, is there a way that we can run a shuttle from the downtown area to the harness track? So we've made that request to the USGA. And I want to be careful how I phrase this because the USGA has been a great partner and they've done a lot for us. But that's something they said logistically they could not accommodate for us to do. That would, having a third party go into there would mess up their system. They wouldn't be able to load and offload, and it causes additional problems like, what if someone gets left behind? Who's responsible for them? What if they go to the wrong lot? Things that they are not logistically set up to do. So that's our current situation.
So who would find these options most awkward? I'm trying to figure out what is the size of the universe that we're,
Yeah, so this
Leaving
would
out.
be someone that, spent most of the day on the course, and they saw our sign that said, go visit downtown Pinehurst, and they're like, sure, we should do that. So they walk over, grab a beer and do some shopping, and it's like, 8 or 9 o'clock, they're like, how do we get back to my car? So those people would need to hustle over back to the harness track to get back to their car.
and their way to hustle over is to go back through the gate
Through the gate, yeah,
and just backtrack to the harness track?
yeah.
Okay.
Or they could try to call an Uber or,
Right, they could do something like that. Or if they plan ahead enough, they could say, well, at 5 o'clock when we're done watching the golf, the play, we can hop on the shuttle back to our car there and then ride our car back to downtown. It's probably that's a 30-minute drive, but it could be done.
Okay.
My question is, thinking back to 2014, it's hot every day. And I've been out on the golf course until 5 or 5:30, and I've seen the signs. I'm saying, hey, I've never been to the Village of Pinehurst. Why don't we walk in and get some dinner? And by 7:30 or 8, I want to be finished, and I want to get back to my car, and I don't really want to walk a mile. Now, some people might do that not knowing that it's a mile to walk. And I agree with you, we want to be good partners with the USGA. We're not talking about running Greyhound buses with 50 and 100 people at a time in them. You're talking about conceivably 8-person golf carts or what have you. It's a 10-minute trip. I can't imagine that complicates their logistics that much, that we couldn't facilitate on behalf of our downtown business owners a way for people to get back from the Holly Inn or the Sand parking lot back to the harness track.
it's not that important to the point you just made, but we couldn't get golf carts down there.
A vehicle of some kind. I can't believe that from the standpoint of the village budget, that it is a material expense. I think it is a material benefit to all of the business owners in downtown. I'm perfectly willing to believe that people can walk off the golf course, come down Carolina Vista, walk into the village. I'm less convinced that many people want to, at 8 or 8:30 at night, walk a mile back to get on another shuttle to go to their car.
Now, how do we overcome the fact that the USGA won't allow it?
I don't want to ask, is it their call? It's our harness track, it's our roads, and we're
They
providing.
they rented it.
They
rented it.
our licensing agreement with them gives them full control of the facility.
The other part of this is that so far, we've had an excellent relationship with USGA and working through issues. And I think it's appropriate to continue with the point of contact we have right now, which is Doug, and working with them. And certainly trying to brainstorm any other items. I think that your May 3rd meeting also may be a time of possibly brainstorming. I'm happy to listen to other ideas. But I want to make sure that we're working synergistically here, okay? And the idea that you can't imagine it's going to cause that much of a problem, well, we don't know the whole plan here. So we're talking out of ignorance. And I think it's important that we work through this as a team and see if there's something else we can come up with. I see what you're saying here, okay, that there's a challenge in there. If there's a better route, that's fine, but let's make sure we're doing it as a team.
Let me make a suggestion. Is there a way we can educate this small segment of people that this is what you're going to encounter?
Yeah.
However many you are, and I don't think there's a lot. But if this is what your plans are, here's the easiest way for you to solve your situation. Whether it's leave a little earlier, whether it's be sure you have an Uber number with you, whatever it is, we ought to make it user-friendly for those people who will be facing this, because I think, I just can't put a number on it at the moment.
I guess when I think about this, the more I think about this, the more I realize that most of the world now, when they're faced with a transportation problem in a faraway destination, or whether they're traveling or whatever, it's natural for them to call Uber.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't know whether or not there's actually going to be enough Uber capacity to deal with this problem or not. You know, I think if I was a smart Uber driver from, you know, our region of North Carolina, knowing this event was going on, that I might try to come over and take advantage of the opportunity, but there's no organized activity or effort to try to bring that together. So I don't know if that's going to solve the problem, but I think that's what would most of these people we're talking about, it would be the first thing they try to do.
Right.
And if we were a larger metropolitan area, that might actually work.
Yeah.
And it is conceivable, either if Uber or Lyft or other people put the word out to drivers, I don't know that I want to come down here from Raleigh, but I might come from somewhere, but I might, I
Fayetteville
don't
or-
know.
yeah.
For those 3 nights, Thursday through Saturday, I don't think Sunday will be a big night, but Thursday through Saturday, it might be worth me coming down here and seeing what develops.
This is a sort of marketing suggestion. No shuttle to Harness Track from downtown is a negative way of telling people things. So work on the messaging
Well,
just a
yeah,
little,
that
okay?
was
I know what you're
Be
telling
clear
us.
to this board, but I mean, to John's point, like, that's the very first thing we thought of. Oh, well, let's just shuttle them down there. And that's something we explored with the USGA. And, you know, I even called in the big guns, and Jeff Batten called in, and he got the same answer I did. So we had to.
Jeff Batten himself.
Yeah, himself, yeah. But I did hear he may be driving Uber that week, so.
Is it worth calling 1-800-UBER and letting them know that there's a pretty big event here, and we're passing the word out that we may need that, and sharing our transportation plans?
Yes, we have, yeah,
And same thing with 1-800-LIFT?
yes. So
Okay.
let's just let them know, there's a lot of people. And anyone who's watching, hey, you may want to vacuum your car, there might be an opportunity there.
Okay.
So, yeah, but to the mayor's point, I think if we can definitely make this clear on how you get back to your car, that can also help. And we are willing to go back to the USGA and say, are there any other options? But the option that we did come up with was that they would ride back to their car and then drive back to the village.
Let me ask one other alternative question. Rather than shuttling them back all the way to the harness track, might we be able, after 5 or 6 o'clock, to drop them off on Carolina Vista, where at least they're at the exit 8, entrance 8. Now they only have a half a mile or less to walk down through the pavilions, where maybe the merchandise tent is open and the merchandise people might sell something also. I
Yeah,
have no idea.
that we can definitely look into that. That may be a possibility where we drop them
Don't
off.
conflict with their existing shuttle operations at the harness track.
Yeah, if we can drop them off somewhere at Marshall Park, then they just cross over and be able to walk down there. So, yeah, we can look into that.
And anything that we could do to be helpful and cut that mile or whatever it is down, I think at 8 o'clock at night is much more valuable than it is at 4 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yeah, great.
I think that in any time you have something of this scale, there are a lot of details. And we're not seeing all those details, okay? Doug has been seeing a fair amount of them. He's working with the USGA. And I think that from my perspective on the council here, move forward and continue to work through that, and I trust your judgment in working with us. I encourage any brainstorming for people who have knowledge of what's actually happening on there. But I don't think we're going to solve it at this table, at this point in time, get in the weeds.
What, any other thoughts on that part of the transportation segment of US Open that you want to
That's
mention?
all I had. Are there any questions, other questions on that?
No, I don't have any other. I think we're, again, my only thoughts were, let's figure out a way to message it
Yeah,
easier.
I think that's a very good point. That's something that can certainly happen.
Okay, thank you.
So parking, it's out of the way. Let's talk about the fun stuff. So this is what we're going to be doing in the downtown park. We're trying to encourage as many people to come from off the course, but probably even more likely it's people that don't have a ticket for that day but are in the village. They'll be able to come downtown and experience the festivities and hopefully spend some of their money at some of our local merchants. So here's what's going on. We will have a viewing screen, which will have the tournament on all the time.
All the time is Thursday through Sunday?
Whenever it is on the Golf Channel or NBC, it will be on our viewing
Thank you.
screen. Yep. In the evenings, we're going to have concerts and a movie on Tuesday night. I'll go into that in a little more detail, but the putting green will be up. This is what it looked like in 2014. There will also be a golf simulator. We're going to have food trucks and a beer garden Wednesday and Saturday evenings. That's kind of our big nights. Wednesday will be kind of the kickoff to the championship series, and then Saturday kind of the end date and closing it up. And then we'll have just different activities going on. Some of the passive activities we have is a scavenger hunt. So a local potter is making squirrels that we're going to hide around downtown. So the businesses can put them in their business or outside to just kind of generate some buzz and get people moving around the whole village. Self-guided tours for anyone who wants those, and we have photo opportunities. So a couple of things here. So this will be the putting green area. Then we're going to have our, let's see, what is the Olympic rings. So I'll show a picture of that in a second. We'll have our stage here, production tent, the viewing screen will be here, and our golf simulator truck will be right here. And we will have a welcome tent on the village green with information and letting people know where they can go to shop and eat and all those exciting things.
A question, what is a self-guided tourism? What does that mean?
Audrey has volunteered to do a couple of guided tours, but we will also have the self-guided books at our welcome tent for people to take and walk around.
Okay.
Who's operating the beer garden? Who's selling the beer and so forth?
So we put out a request for proposals, and I don't know if we're quite ready to put that out, but we put it to our local vendors in the area, in the village, and in Southern Moore County. So, yeah.
Sounds good?
So this is the Olympic ring. So NBC is a sponsor of both the US Open and the Olympics. So that will be a cool photo opportunity. This is a picture of what the drive box looks like. And here is our list of events that are going on. So we want to get people there early for fun. So there's going to be yoga in the park. Like I mentioned, Audrey will be doing some walking tours. So those will be Tuesday, Thursday. She is also doing a presentation on the history of Pinehurst. So that'll be Wednesday afternoon in the archives. Paint in the park is going to be like a paint by number thing that kids can go and fill in.
Can we capture her archives presentation to then put up on the Gibbons Memorial Library and Archives website? Can you check with her? I don't know what
I
the
can check
protocol
with
is.
her and IT, but that seems like a reasonable request.
Okay. I think it'd be something we could go back to and market a little bit.
Yep.
Thank you.
And we talked about this before, but the farmer's
Farmers
market will be
market,
there
that's great.
Wednesday and Saturday.
Good job in getting that in there. Thank
Yeah.
you.
It'll be a little crowded, but it'll work out, so it'll be fine. On Tuesday evening, we're playing the greatest game ever played. So it's a Disney movie from the early 2000s.
All right.
Wednesday night is going to be Military Appreciation Night. So we'll have a pipe and drum. The 82nd Airborne Chorus will be coming, And then to finish out the night, we'll have the sand band. So we've also asked some dignitaries to join us, so the mayor may share a few words. And we'll have a military dignitary, and someone from the USGA as well. On Thursday, it'll be a DJ playing in the park. Friday, we'll have a band, Whiskey Pines. And then on Saturday, again, it's probably our bigger evening, is going to be the Parks Brothers Band playing there. So these are bands that we've had in the past. Some of them have been in Live After Fives, but pretty popular in local area.
Doug, that's an excellent display of the week. So for people who want to come and or make decisions, they've got a one page to look at and they can make some decisions. That's helpful.
And again, this is on, well, it's not in this format, but it's on our website, all these events that are up there. Some things we're just dealing with, like we have to figure out restrooms and solid waste and all these things. So details that you don't really need to worry about, because hopefully we've taken care of all of them.
Hold on before we don't have to worry about things. Food truck allowance requests, what's that mean?
Well, originally we had planned on having food trucks there more, really actually the whole time, but based on some of the feedback we got, it's only going to be the big evenings on Wednesday and Saturday.
Right, so
So that is not no longer a challenge.
that'll be revised
Yeah,
or
that,
taken away.
taken away.
Okay.
These are things we have dealt with, yeah.
I'm trying to minimize the questions.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I get it,
So look at that from that standpoint.
yeah.
Thinking back to the concept of I leave the course, I go back to my car, and I try to drive into downtown. Road closures, are we envisioning similar to when we've done the wine walks and
So it will be as small as we can make it, so it'll only be between Tufts Park and the parking by the flagpole, so just that small area. So everything but that small portion of Cherokee will be open. And, yeah. Any other questions? All right, social district, not much new on this. So we talked about it quite a bit in the past, but again, noon to 11. This is our logo that has to be printed on every cup. So we've shared that with the local ABC licensees, and we've ordered stickers so that if they can't get it printed on their cup, they can put the sticker on the cup. And we're just trying to make it as easy as possible for them to comply with the law. And I don't think we need to go through this, but the amount of detail that goes into the cups that they drink is kind of surprising. So it has to say certain things on it and can only be 16 ounces and cannot be glass, all exciting stuff.
Do we have a good idea from the past about how much trash receptacles we'll need for a social district?
We do. So we ordered, specifically for the social district, we ordered cardboard ones that can be at every entry exit point of the
Okay.
thing. We've also ordered, well, we have extra garbage cans that will be placed around the downtown area. So will be more garbage cans than there ever have been downtown.
That's great.
So a couple of things that we're working with the businesses, they have to decide whether or not they're going to allow alcohol into their store if they're not a alcohol serving location. So some businesses will want that just because it might invite more people in, but some people might have inventory they don't want beer spilled on. But that is a process we're working through.
Do we have particular stores that you can you can exit from and not be in the social district?
No.
Okay, that's right.
Not anywhere their main entrance is. Some of them maybe through a back alley, but
Okay.
yeah, again, this is the social district area. Any questions on anything social district related?
Just give me a minute here.
I'm trying to think. No, never mind, sorry. That does include the Manor Inn there.
Yeah. Okay. If nothing else. So ancillary private events, Obviously, this is a big opportunity for some businesses. We have had one submit the Pinecrest Inn, so we are working through their application and what parameters we're going to put on that. But they did it in 2014, kind of similar idea where they want to close down a portion of Dogwood and, have a big kind of block party there. So that will likely happen, and we'll likely approve that. But so far, that's the only one that's been submitted. And that's all I have. So any other questions that have come up, things you've been hearing? Again, I would encourage, if you get a lot of questions, all this information's on our website, and we'll update it with more details as we get them.
My general comments are just to try to polish this so it's as easy for the folks that we're now directing to the website, and even if they're not happy with an answer, they can walk away knowing an answer. Because I'm impressed. We seem to have touched every base, questions I've heard, and my colleagues I'm sure have heard. I think most of them are answered in this, but let's just keep that in mind, and as if there is something that changes, let's make it a breaking news alert or something so that.
Yeah, to that point, so this is information's on the website. Come maybe May 1st, we're going to start really pushing this out to residents. In early June, we're going to send out a newsletter to every residence in the village. So that'll include a lot of this information, maybe even a little bit more about what you can or can't do on residential properties, things like that. And then it'll also include like a schedule of our events and things like that to, if people are renting out their house, to leave it so people know what's going on, or just so local residents know that, we're still having stuff go on. It's not like the US Open has taken over everything and there's nothing going on downtown. We want to encourage people to come and join us because we're trying to have a big party and have a lot of fun with everyone.
The Welcome Center in the theater building, what will be its hours?
It'll be extended. I'm trying to remember what it is. So we're having the tent on the Village Green. That's the other Welcome Center, a satellite office. That is open until 8 p.m. I forget when the actual Welcome Center, we're going to close it.
I see Matt's here, might have an answer.
Yes, I just wanted to clarify. The Welcome Center will be open from 10 to 7.
Okay.
And then starting on Tuesday of that week, the Welcome Center is going to have a welcome tent on the Village Green as well that'll be running from 11 to 8.
Thanks. Questions from my colleagues?
I would also encourage us, to the extent we can, to track changes that the USGA makes on its website. I know it's not always possible, but they don't always let us know that they change certain things, and we can't keep people up to date if we don't know about that.
Yeah, good point. We meet with them. Well, right now it's every other week, but we met with them earlier today, so we have a opportunity to make that happen.
And a general question about security. I am sure our police department is very looped in on what's going on and so on. Is there any particular cautions they've advised us about as a village that we need to be concerned about or prepared for?
So nothing new or out of the ordinary. I think what's important is to remember, do anything you would, in a large group. So make sure you lock your cars, make sure you're not walking alone at night. The simple common sense things that people should do, just remember to do those.
Okay. Thank you. Barb? Jack? Dr. Morgan? John? No? I don't hear any other questions. Sounds great. Keep us posted. You have carte blanche access to brief us at any meeting. And certainly, if there's some breaking news, you can email the council. And I know I keep generating people to the website, and some of them are surprised that they can find out anything they want there. But once they do, they stop asking questions.
Right.
Okay, thank you, Doug.
I'll just stay here.
Please do. Yes. Item 3, consider ordinance 2409 text amendment to the municipal code relative to free parking on private property.
Fee parking.
Oh, you are correct. Fee parking. Took my glasses off.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. Yes. So Doug's up here to support me and make sure I don't say anything wrong here. Staff came together and looked at the potential of a text amendment to our parking for a fee ordinance, which is 7207. In the past, during the US Opens, there's been a temporary ordinance that has been provided that has restricted parking for a fee on residential properties, and particularly around, parking in residential front lawn, for instance. And so because of the, now the repeats of the US Opens going forward every 5 years, that there was this question that got brought up of whether or not we needed to look at, instead of doing this as a temporary ordinance, potentially building this into our actual municipal code. And so this language that's in front of you is merely just gauging your receptivity to, or your reception to this type of language change. So 7207 originally talks about, 7207C in particular, really talks about commercial parking, oversized vehicle parking, and trailer parking for a fee. And so what the proposed text amendment change in front of you strikes out that commercial language, and thank you, Doug, for bringing that down. As you can see, it changes that commercial vehicle language and takes out oversized vehicles, and it just includes motorized vehicles. And motorized vehicles is defined by North Carolina general statute. And so that talks about every vehicle which is self-propelled and every vehicle designed to run upon the highways, which is pulled by a self-propelled vehicle. So we thought that was more encompassing of any and all type of motor vehicles. That includes golf cart parking as well. And then, but then we also did include language in here that did talk about in conjunction or related to temporary event permits. As a part of our municipal code under Parks and Recreation, we do have some allowances potentially for parking in regards to temporary events, as well as what we did not strike but has been included in the past, the storing of vehicles for a fee that receives specific approval by you all, the Village Council. So again, that's merely just to gauge your interest in this type of text amendment change and to move forward.
I mean, what's the practical impact of this on our
Yes.
residents?
Yes, so I would say that because this is parking for a fee, this specifically around violations and the way it's enforced, this actually falls to within our police department. And so our police officers, law enforcement officers would be the ones that would be issuing citations around any residents or any resident that is in violation of this change.
So it would eliminate someone standing out in front of their front lawn with the sign that says $15 parking and
Right.
parking on their front lawn.
Of which we don't have much of that to begin with, right? That's what I'm.
Yes.
So it's not a real immediate impact on somebody who's going to storm the gates here.
I'll be a little more direct on it. What problem are we trying to solve with this?
So I would say that it's more whether, in the past, we've always had some temporary ordinance around this for the US Open. So it is something that we have practiced in the past, just whether or not there is an appetite to say, instead of these temporary uses, or temporary ordinance changes, that we would actually just put something in codified.
What I'm reading on here is you've said, okay, we got the commercial ordinance, got it. I understand that. A car parking in somebody's driveway for a fee, actually, you're taking them off of other parking issues, and so you're decompressing it from there. I'm still trying to figure out what problem we're trying to solve.
And like Matt said, it's been done in the past, so we wanted to stay consistent, so it didn't become a problem. I'd say the most important consideration is we don't want to encourage people to start coming to the village rather than parking in the satellite offices, satellite parking lots. Again, it hasn't been a problem in the past, so is this something we need to do?
All right, from what I'm reading right now, and the changes you've made, I'm not seeing it really solving a problem that's occurring, number one. Number two, using a driveway to allow someone to park in there, whether it's charged $50, $20, or, hey, George, you're my friend, come over here and just park in my driveway. who cares? I mean, it's being used as a driveway. And it's not like he can put in 75 cars in a driveway as to what's going on. So I just don't see what we're solving here. I do understand the oversized vehicles, the idea of commercial motorized things, but I don't see any reason, unless you can give me some other information here, I don't see any reason to go down this change.
Again, I think the main reason is that we don't want to start encouraging people to start driving downtown when they're not already. But that's why we put it on the work session, to just
Right.
fill it out, see if you are
Well,
interested.
if I could take Jeff's line of thinking and maybe extend it a little bit, would it be our intention to grant a temporary event permit for the US Open so that this would not apply during the US Open? And if we were, what other times are we intending to have this be applicable? Because I don't know that we have that many other temporary events of a size that there would be significant demand for something like this.
I think the intent was for this to be a temporary ordinance.
I mean, originally it has
In
been
the past,
temporary, but, you know, as we discussed, we're like, well, if we're going to be doing this every few years and we're going to having more championships held here in Pinehurst, let's just put it in the actual.
But let me be clear, Jeff Sanborn. So I would not be able to do this during the US Open, but during non-US Open, I would be able to do this? I was a little confused.
I'm just saying what we've done in the past.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way this is currently written, it would be all the time. If council wants to direct us to make it never or sometimes, we can do that.
And Jeff Morgan has said specifically driveways, but I don't see driveway here. In theory, this is anywhere on the property, including the front lawn hypothetically, if I want to allow that.
Yes.
Or in, I guess it's not necessarily the right of way because I don't own that.
Right.
It's sort of undecided. Well, it's sort of preventive. I suppose theoretically, it could be a platform where people are looking a place to park. And you may be out of town for the weekend, but if you can come to my COVP and say, hey, I like to park in that driveway just for the week. I'm coming down there to visit somebody. I guess you pay for it. I mean, I think it's highly unlikely, but I'm trying to imagine how, in the absence of it, it could be abused.
Well, for the opens that I've been here, I don't see where it's ever been an issue everywhere, anywhere.
We got enough problems as it is to occupy your time. I would rather not occupy your time with a non-problem. I'm sorry, I don't see the need for this, and I say nay.
And, I mean,
I mean,
this is not Ann Arbor, Michigan, and 6 or 7 times a year, there's a football stadium with 1 billion people who come to it.
Or the Bronx and next to Yankee Stadium.
Right.
So, I mean, you know,
We don't have that as a problem frequently. I'm trying to think of any other event other than the US Open. So the question is, are we trying to just prevent it during the US Open, or is there a more generic thing? And if, and should we even prevent it? Because I would agree with Jack, I don't recall seeing people holding signs up, $20 to park on my front lawn.
Not here. Was this prompted by inquiries or suggestions from residents, or I'm trying to remember the origin?
So my understanding, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, is that, again, this is something that's been in practice for a previous US Open. So then it's from a staff perspective, it was, now that we have some recurring times when it comes to the US Open, and again, with more potential championships coming into the area, is there a reason to look at this as and codify it more into the municipal code than it is to have it as a part of the temporary event ordinances or temporary ordinances that we have in place just for the individual events that will be coming up?
Again, I'm wondering whether this isn't a solution in search of a problem. But if we don't do this, if we table this, this practice is currently prohibited. It's just different language. It talks
no,
of commercial?
Commercial oversized vehicles is currently prohibited.
Okay, but not
Not cars.
cars.
Not cars.
Yeah. Yeah, if you want to tell us to let it die, it can die.
But, okay, so that's the difference. That's the
I
distinction.
think we'll be busy with other things during that week. I don't think we need to look for this, to tell you the truth.
I have no need to see this again at this point in time. If it becomes a problem, I'm happy to have a discussion.
Okay.
Great.
Any other thoughts? Okay, I think we can withdraw this.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All right, item 4, request for qualifications for an update to the PDO. This has a bit of a longer tail to it. It's not imminent, but it's worthwhile, I think, to bring it up so we get some early thoughts and some guidance as to what things might play out like. So I see Alex Cameron, and your show, Alex. Go right ahead.
Yeah, so thank you. So this is a project that's been in the works for quite some time, and here we are. We're at the point where there's a substantially complete draft RFQ, and the intent of this agenda item is to, as of yesterday morning, was shared and circulated to you all. And Jack, thank you for your feedback you gave me. It's an 11-page document. The intent of the RFQ is basically to start a screening process for interested firms who want to tackle our project and can give us a background of relevant history of similar projects they've worked on, kind of ooh and ahs with what they believe they can, how well they can help us through managing this project and get us to the finish line. So this is just the initial step of a two-step process typically where after we get a list of respondents, staff will sort of shortlist those firms and then recommend a handful of them for interviews with Village Council, and we'll get all those meetings set up, and after the interviews are conducted, think similar to how the library architect process went, you guys will have an opportunity to kind of weigh all those and make your selection in which firm you'd like to work with, and then move into contract negotiations and then really roll the sleeves up and get to work. So the intent of the RFQ is, again, to kind of set aside, an introduction on what the project entails, talk a little bit about the community, and then kind of dive into a little bit of what we expect the project to, or what we're looking for with this project. And when we mean update the Pinehurst
But
Development Ordinance.
what was the last time we updated the PDO?
It's been amended several times over the past years. I think the last significant change was 2011-ish.
Ended up in 2013, yeah.
14 was mainly a recodification, and where we went to a sort of merging a lot, but I think the last real wholesale revamp was 2011, and I know, Jack, you were part of that as well. The format we're operating under is probably like the construction of the document itself is well over 20 years, and it's well exceeded its lifespan. We're living with a Frankenstein-type document right now, and we really need to move into a more modern-type format, one that's more user-friendly for everyone, those in the village staff who administer it day to day, to the new homeowners who are looking to do a new deck and know where do I need to go and search for what those parameters are, to those who just need to have a better understanding of all the changes that have taken place. There's been some significant amendments to this zoning code in the past 10 years, and we really need to catch up. I know staff has a list of, they range from significant to a little more minor recommended changes of 40 or so items. We need to come into better compliance with model ordinances such as the watershed ordinance. We need to incorporate our flood damage prevention ordinance into the zoning code. We really got to get with the times. We've been behind, and there's some opportunities to clarify some issues where there's some ambiguity and clear up some shortfalls that the document currently has.
Alex, am I right that the comprehensive plan update is that there's a statutory requirement that we do that so often?
Correct.
Is there any statutory requirement for the PDO? No, that's entirely within the jurisdiction of us.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
This concept of PDO or UDO update is one that's also been identified by the County Board of Commissioners, particularly with regard to some of the smaller towns that don't have full-time planning staffs and what have, keeping their PDO or UDO updated relative to ordinances that may have been passed by their governing bodies. So it's important that we do this. I had a couple more generic questions, maybe for my own edification. I had thought when I first heard of this topic that this was primarily a legal exercise, that law firms would be involved. We refer throughout to this as consultants. Who is it that does this work? What sort of, are there consultants specific to this area?
There's some that are just so specific to writing code, but there's others that are much larger that have this sort of as an expertise or specialty within their umbrella, which oftentimes, depending on the size of the firm, of course, they have folks who are maybe legal experts as well, those who may be experts in more engineering standards instead of just specific to zoning code. Obviously, preference would be for those who were up to speed with the North Carolina general statutes that govern zoning and land development regulations here in North Carolina.
Once we contract with someone, how long would we expect them to take? Or what is a rough, not specific points, but the duration of the timeline to do this?
So we have a generic timeline within the IAP that we would follow, and you'll see some of the areas that are highlighted here on this draft document are those that, after getting this appropriate feedback with council and before issuing the RFQ, I would tighten up that timeline. There's going to be a few checks and balances that we'll iron out again with the contract. But I think once we have a contract, I think what we can do is there'll be that consult with the village staff and the consultants to share again some of those topics that we've addressed. They'll have time to look at, the recommendations of the Stormwater Management Master Plan, look up some of these, again, updated model ordinances, and give them a course of a couple of months to get a first draft to the village staff to take a look at, and then we can provide some initial feedback, and hopefully we do that once or twice, and then we can have the public engagement where we unveil a little more refined draft, if you will, get that public comment, and then make appropriate changes, and then move forward to the required process, which would be public hearings by Planning and Zoning Board and Village Council for adoption.
This sounds like 4 to 6 months, maybe longer.
It would be much, I think you're talking about the refinement draft taking about 6 months, ideally, and then you've got a couple of more meetings, and judging by my experience here with similar projects, you might as well add another 6 months.
So it is likely then, or it is possible, apropos of the work that Jack and Jeff did with regard to comp plan update, that we might have gone through some form of comp plan update before this process was completed.
I think they can be independent.
Yeah, because.
But independent, but they're related, the two processes are, but they are related to the extent that reference is made to ensuring that the PDO is
correct.
consistent with the comp plan and so forth.
And there are a lot of comp plan, 2019 comp plan strategies that we would want to look to implementing with this update to those that we have not maybe had the time or the capacity to tackle.
Well, that's my point. So if some of those, if any of those change, that's an important input to this process.
I believe if it were a change that were prioritized through the council as one that needs to be addressed with this update, then yes.
Well, this is helpful. Please, keep going. I'm
So
learning.
I went through, again, talking a little bit about the community. We're going to give them a list of some of those relevant documents. We think that, I mentioned the Stormwater Management Master Plan being one of the newer ones. Of course, the comprehensive plan being a major driver, of course. And then sort of, again, the anticipated scope, what we were just talking about, that sort of timeline and process that I just outlined with you guys. And then what it really gets to the nuts and bolts are the submittal requirements, where we're asking any firms who are interested in this project, that want to be considered, here's what we're expecting you to submit by the certain deadline, whatever we specify. It's typically about a 2 to 3 week time frame once it's issued that we ask everyone who's interested to give us their responses by. And then talk a little bit about how the village is going to evaluate those qualifications of those interested firms and parties, and then what those next steps would be. And we've built in, I believe, a process in which, where we could have a half dozen or so that we think rose to the top and interview as many as we deem to be necessary, or there might be just one or two that, or maybe one just blows us away that has more experience than anyone, has all the in-house expertise of what we would like to see. And their sales pitch to us is that it's just perfect for us. We can enter right into negotiations with them. We also have a caveat if we would like to send out an RFP. So
Right.
we can get a little bit more detailed proposal for how they would.
Are you familiar with any of our neighboring communities in Moore County who have recently gone through a PDO update?
You know, I'm not. Being a member of other communication throughout the state and, you know, regional workshops and all, there are several folks who are still very interested. The 160D updates, I think, were probably the last big influx of folks who were having major updates that was required by state law. We were able to do that in-house, but there seems to be a lot of folks who are still doing this type of work. I don't think we're going to have any issue with getting some qualified firms that would be interested.
I get where I was headed was, do we have sort of a gold standard or someone out there that everyone points to? Boy, did Community X did a really good job on this.
There's, not immediate in our area, but there's a couple that we really looked at when we were kind of formulating, developing this RFQ. Holly Springs was one. If you're familiar with Holly Springs, you're talking about a community that has exploded.
Right.
And needed to make some very quick adjustments. Wake Forest also, within the past 3 or 4 years. Again, communities that probably aren't a peer community necessarily, but the product that they've got does seem to be very high quality and very easy to navigate, if you will.
Are you going to go through the whole presentation? Because I have a couple of questions, but I'll save them.
Yeah.
I didn't really have the document was shared, it's 11 pages, it's outlined, I think.
Just back up a little there where you had the links. Yeah, yeah.
So here's a list of some of those relevant documents that we want.
So it's a small area plans, mass pedestrian plan. Okay, I was going to ask about that. Walkway, sidewalks, all that. So it's all things that we've sort of worked on or been part of that gets talked about. Parks and Rec Master Plan. Some of this is we've recently
Correct.
done. Okay,
You see some old ones there and you see some new ones.
right.
Yep. So all those, again, would be very, very important for trying to prepare the project. Here's, and Jack, I appreciate, I struggled with the term task and deliverables through this section. I'm happy with one or the other, or just saying task and deliverables for each section. It's less is more in most cases with these. But it's pretty detailed on what we're expecting through the process, what we need our PDO to turn into, how we expect it to morph, what we need to bring it online to our long-range goals. Again, we're getting close to about 15 years by adoption of a new PDO for really needing this to take place. Obviously important, because this is a public document, is robust, and there will be time for that community engagement. We want to make sure that we get firms who are well-versed in explaining what these changes could mean, how it could be, you know, I know something I would prioritize in looking at what a firm can do is how user-friendly for everyone are you going to make that? How easily understandable can you make this document, which can be very, very complex? And it just makes it clear. There was a time when there was a fear of having a section for each zoning district because you ended up with a code that was this thick and no one saw it and they just, you know, were immediately turned away. Well, now with everything being digital and hyperlinked, it's not as intimidating to look at a document that's 700 pages long anymore.
So is a community engagement event, could it be something like, and this predates me a bit, but I've heard people talk about something that took place at the Fair Barn years ago when it was a comp plan update or some update where lots of people came out and heard a presentation and voiced some thoughts. Is that community engagement?
Exactly.
But also, I would add that the community engagement should, in this particular document, include developers, builders, anyone who would be using the document.
Right.
or-
A lot of stakeholders, if you will.
Right, stakeholders, yeah, that'd be a good way to put it, yeah. Versus just the general public who may be a little bit glassy-eyed when they see what this is all about.
And we may be one of the same, and the way it's written now, it does say, we're asking for a minimum of one of those sessions when we're at the point of negotiating in terms of the contract and the project itself, if we make sure that it's written as such that if we feel an additional public engagement sessions are warranted because of the complexity of the nature of the topic, that we can have more than one, or making sure that we're open to folks who, may be working during the day or of those professionals.
Just on 4.2.3A, and stating in advance that I have absolutely no experience or expertise with anything like this. What, if any, is the role of council in determining the community engagement approach? So only staff is referred to here, which may be perfectly appropriate.
It's really meaning that we're scheduling it as appropriate. We're going to find the venue. We're going to make sure that, everything is available that we need, technology. Of course, there will be robust communication. It'll be blasted out there. Everyone, we hope, will be able to know that the event's happening. And of course, I would recommend Village Council, of course, being there. It's really an attempt for you to be able to, with your participation or your attendance, to listen to what's being said, what's being presented, and what feedback the consultants are getting.
Okay. Go ahead. Keep going.
Yeah, when I looked at this, read through it, and you already, I guess, stole my thunder there in the sense that I certainly look at this as user-friendly, and it's comprehensive through that for a relatively complex topic with it. So I thought it was one that can be used, and it's well-written here. So I appreciate the changes.
Can we stop there on 4.2.5? This was the section that really got me thinking about the comp plan updates and what have you. There's at least, the focus areas, there've been some, one we attempted to deal with, it's now at least tabled or a dead issue, we don't know, maybe it comes to life again. I also saw in little IV, recommendations for overlay districts, including highway corridors. What is the relationship between the UDO and the SMPO? What kind of highway corridors are we talking about that we would have to specify in the Pinehurst PDO/UDO?
The intent here is just those that we locally at Pinehurst, because it's going to be in our planning jurisdiction, that we deem to be those that we would like to protect. We want to have different developmental standards or different uses in order to protect those, what we would identify as critical corridors.
We have no highway corridor overlay district right now. The county does.
Right.
On 15501, 211, Route 1, and so forth. There has been a push, and as we all know, over time, particularly along 211, to develop a highway corridor overlay district to protect the unique situation where you abut a residential district, for example. And so that may be a significant part of this effort to reevaluate that and see what we can do there, whether it, rather than change the office professional district itself, rather than have an overlay district that applies to that area.
So this is a very important section, because we hear update to the Pinehurst Development Ordinance. So those, in the field here, there's two zoning tools. The zoning text, which is the PDO, and then there's the zoning maps. And we have had map amendments that Village Council have reviewed and approved or not, most notably and recently with Pinehurst South and Village Place, form-based districts, trying to merge a map that's something as simple as, yeah, we've identified this area, oh yeah, we even, really worked really hard, Planning and Zoning Board, and segmented those areas even further with what we deem to be building types or uses. But then weaving that in to the current fabric of our zoning text was a monumental task.
and it's not perfect. That needs to be looked at, you have so many cross-reference impacts that could happen. You can, have a solution for 90 things and make 5 more problems, and those 5 problems, one of those might be pretty significant. So we need a real analysis at all our zoning. Is it appropriate to use a highway corridor? This is what a recommendation could come from the consultants. Or do we just change the zoning classifications of particular properties within major corridors?
Or create new ones.
Correct.
Well, the other thing that this wasn't directly focused on it, but I thought in the back of my mind is its applicability in the ETJ.
And that's where the,
Connector, no longer a STIP, not anywhere on the radar, but nonetheless,
and that's where those
it's a zombie
strategies,
project.
those 5 focus areas within the comp plan, the consultant's going to look at those. Focus area 3 has been one that, we discussed during the retreats and the pre-retreat meetings, the hospital area. Our zoning's out to date in that area too. This is going to be something to really get involved in. And it's not just a PDO, our zoning map needs to, they need to come better in line.
Drill down a little more on the ETJ part of this, so I got a good understanding of the nexus here. If we are updating our PDO, we are in essence updating our zoning for the ETJ.
It depends on what recommendation we would get. There's certain,
Or less?
it depends.
It could happen, yes.
Maybe, but not necessarily.
Yeah.
And maybe in some areas, but not broadly across all the ETJ.
And again, because there's specific reference and a decent-sized section in the 2019 comp plan, if that were to be something that were to undergo revision, that would be an important input to this.
And the recommendation could be that the area within Focus Area 1 is what we need it to do, the existing underlying zoning takes care of it as it is.
I'm not predicting the outcome, just saying that there is an intersection here.
And then, of course, we also have in here, looking at some various municipal code amendments, because some of what our department and our staff are responsible for do bleed over in municipal code. Is there something that might be more appropriately placed there or pulled from there and placed into the zoning code? Here's the aforementioned highlighted section of the table with the timeline that I will be able to update. So here's the submittal requirements that, we ask. Most cases, you'll see that there's a maximum limit of number of pages. Sometimes what some firms will do is sometimes they'll just throw together a lot of visuals and not give you a lot of substance to look at.
I recognize that language.
Also, we really want to see past relevant experience. They've seen something, if there's a product and they've worked with another community that sounds just like what we're dying for, we want to be able to see that.
Is this a standard RFQ language we generally?
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yep.
it's good
It's
language.
boilerplate language.
Yeah. And they're submitting, oh, good, I'm glad to see this. They're submitting names and proposed roles for team members.
And their relevant experience.
So
as
you'll
well.
be able to look at those and weigh them as you make a selection.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
And that would be their consultants and any sub-consultants they would have on the team working through the project.
Very good.
All right, and then here's again the evaluation and selection. So the criteria for what we're going to be looking at, I'll nominate whether, or volunteer some other staff members to help me with that selection. Jeff's giggling because he doesn't want it, so. But obviously, again, that user-friendly type document, how well they engage with the public, what their experience is in bringing us into the 21st century. If they've had experience with trying to consolidate various codes and regulations like we have in different places into a more unified development ordinance, we would look more for that. And of course, the personnel that we're going to be working for, not necessarily whose name has top billing with the firm, but who are we working with and what kind of experience and past they have.
Am I right? The village will make decisions based on how much weight to put on each of these
We will
items.
score them.
So that it's just not the lowest bid, there's a weighted,
Absolutely.
thank you.
And I believe, okay, terms and conditions, so here's sort of the CYA language in there, and it kind of gives us a lot of outs. And if we decide to go a different route again, I mentioned if there's somebody just blows us away, or if we don't quite get what we expected, we
back
can go back out.
Sure.
Correct. Yep. And that pretty well concludes the document. And of course, who to contact for additional
Right.
questions. So with any more feedback, what I would like to do is have this issued in about a month. I think our timeline has this, with the IAP, having it going out June 1st. So sometime before then, that would give us some time to review the responses that we get. Give a little bit of time, of course, during the first half of June.
Sure.
And then after that, have a recommendation for certain folks to come in and start scheduling interviews with council.
I guess a couple of things. One, I'd particularly, given Jack's experience and background, would hope he'd become very engaged in this. And two, am I right, when you go back to the timeline, for lack of a better phrase, to be determined blanks, you're looking at 9 months there? Is it a 60-day, you issue the RFQ and you get 60 days to respond? Is that the standard down here?
Oh, no, to get a response just from the RFQ, I would say 2-3 weeks.
Okay.
And
you're
and then that gives us another week or two for staff to kind of weight the scores and then bring forth the nomination or recommendations for council
Okay.
to get here.
I'm glad to hear that.
The thing that can drag this out considerably is that this can be extremely time-consuming on the part of the staff
Sure.
to do. I mean, they got to do all their day-to-day job in addition to developing this and coordinating this. It's not a trivial activity at all.
And the consultants have to develop and draft a document that they think hits the mark, and then there's this, review back and forth with staff before we think they finally got it close
Yeah.
enough to.
It looks like 9 months to me. That's my quick look at it. Les?
In tracking the back and forth that you and Jack had, which made me realize how I had read through this without identifying those issues, so I thought it was very useful. I thought that the page where you've highlighted the various documents that exist, so someone preparing to respond to this can quickly click through those and see what they have to work with. It might be worth summarizing either as a table or what have you, the difference between tasks and deliverables and what have you, just as a way to summarize it for the benefit of people responding to this, just to organize their thoughts, which might make it easier for you all to review, compare and contrast.
Yeah, I think that'll be clarified. I'm not too worried about that. I have couple of questions, not questions, comments. First of all, thrilled they're starting. Thank you very much. Funny getting this going. Having seen this 10 years ago or more, from beginning to end, it can be a long and onerous process. So it won't be simple, surprisingly, even though it sounds easy, just consolidate a document. I will say that our document is very difficult to use compared to reading other municipality documents. They're so much more up to date with graphics, and they're just much easier to read. And some of the definitions of topics are much more up to date and so forth. So modernization really is overdue, I think. There's a couple things, though, that I just want to make sure of. Number one, we're going to start down this process, and it's going to take us some time, anywhere from a year, year and a half, 2 years, who knows. I just don't want to make sure that we don't put off any PDO changes or text amendments that we need to make with some urgency, waiting for this to happen. So if there are things that we consider that are of some critical importance, I'm not sure what it is right now, but we don't want to put off anything just because we're redoing the PDO. I think if we need to make text amendments, we ought to make text amendments. I mean, you look in the paper every week and you see in the legal section, everyone seems to be continuously updating their PDO, and we kind of wait for major things to do, the buffer ordinance or the short-term rentals and so forth and so on. Maybe there's some things from day to day we need to address. I don't know what that is. I just look to you to make sure we don't bypass those. If we need to address them, we should.
From a staff perspective, usually those that really impact our ability to do our day-to-day jump out at us pretty quickly, or if there's some legislation that passes that
Right. The
necessitates a
legislation is a
change
biggie,
very
yeah.
quickly, that's another example.
The second has to do with the project itself. Having been a little bit in the consulting business for a while, I've had the most successful consulting engagements that I engaged in was where both the consultant and the client were actively involved on a constant basis. So I would hope that we either provide a steering committee that can check with this group from time to time, where they're going, what are their assumptions they're making and so forth, and not just send them off into the unknown and then come back, some months later with a document. I think a continual engagement process will be productive for both the village and the consultant at the same time. So I just bring that out. I think
Good
that's
suggestion.
important.
Yeah, I like that suggestion.
Experience because we've sent consultants off and then they've come back and we have to kind of half adjust continuously to get the document or the idea just right, so forth. So this will be a little bit more straightforward because it is a rather well-known document. The Unified Development Ordinance throughout municipalities tend to be similar, I should say. So.
And I'll go out on a limb and say that I'm probably the single most informed and comfortable staff member knowing with our current PDO. So constant communication and collaboration with the consultants on my end with them to make sure that they clearly know what we're missing and what that document needs so our staff can administer and enforce that ordinance. I think will be key. And I've got a vested interest in that, of course, myself. So I hear you in that.
And I wouldn't be shy about trying to engage those interested parties or stakeholders, however you want to call it, in the community that use the document, developers and people who own property that may be considering looking at our PDO. Engage them at appropriate times. Let's not put them off until the last. Just my free advice. Cost you.
Other thoughts or comments from council? Dr. Morgan?
I think Jack's points were good. I've commented before, I think it's a good flowing document. I'd like to move forward.
Okay. I think you've got a green light to
Alex,
start to
appreciate it.
proceed and keep us posted, and look forward to seeing this evolve.
Next steps, are you to revise this, bring back a final version for us, or is this going out in 30 days?
It seemed like what feedback we got was minor enough. I don't know that it needs to come back and
I think
council
we're
wish
good
it.
to go on this stage here.
That's fine with me.
Yep, I'll notify council when it's been issued and when we expect the submissions to come in.
Appreciate
Okay.
it. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay. Thank you, everybody. Discussion on MyVOP. There he is. Doug, the intrepid Doug Willardson.
Yeah, lots of fun tonight. All right, so I have a couple of things we want to go over. So I have some usage information, but I think what you really want to talk about is the privacy settings, so we'll get to that quickly. So for background, MyVOP got started in March 2016. Originally, it was about $6,000. Now we're almost up to 10. But the goal was to handle our complaints in a systematic and appropriate way, so the same information gets shared with everyone, and that we don't lose things and things falling through the cracks. So we researched best management complaint practices, and we came up with MyVOP. To date, 5,600 people have downloaded it, mostly on Apple. We've had 1,000 since 2020, so people are still using it. And we've had almost 45,000 requests built into MyVOP.
Hold on, go back to that once more. I want to absorb the data carefully. So we've got 5,500 residents probably who downloaded it.
Yeah.
Since 2016, but in the last 5 years, there's only been 900 downloads. So that's a real slowing down of,
Yeah, I think it's because most of the existing residents already have it downloaded is the reason for that.
Most existing residents that want it or are interested or, at some point you kind of reach saturation, and then what you're trying to do is make sure that the new people in the community are getting it.
of 18,000 residents, we've got a third.
I think it isn't necessarily population, it is more dwelling units.
Yeah,
Well,
It's there'd be some trade-off there.
people
probably, yeah.
People
Could
carrying
be
it around on their
spouse.
phone, couples and households. Now, the overall requests, what does requests mean since 2000?
Yeah, any submittals in MyVOP. Anything that got submitted through MyVOP.
Okay, those are submissions, that's okay.
And that goes back to 2000.
Yeah, we could pull the data for before that, but yeah, in the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, that date is
That was just a
started in
random.
2016, so.
Oh,
Right, that's what I'm asking.
oh, yeah, yeah. I mean, I may look at Jason because he gave me that number, but
Hate to be a stickler for detail, but
Good evening. So that number is the earliest the system goes back by default, with, like, as far as it'll let me go back was 2000, so that's what I put in there for Doug. That doesn't mean we were collecting those requests here in 2000, because we didn't start this until 2016, actually around May or June of 2016.
so since inception.
Since conception, that's correct.
Okay,
And I will say, as far as the app downloads, of course, the MyVOP app is not the only way you can submit tickets. Probably most of them come in through our website anyway. The app is just a convenient way, usually for the younger folks that carry their phones with them and like to do things via the app.
and that 44,000 number would include the internal requests. Those are not
Yes.
all external
That's correct.
resident
Yep.
questions, complaints, whatever.
are we happy with the usage and how it works? And just your opinions, looking for.
Yeah, I will say, since I've been here right around 18 years. and
Sure.
We've had many different software packages. We got some great ones and some not so great ones, and we've switched some out. This has probably been one of our best purchases since then. We have very, very little complaints. When we went through this Birdie process to select a complaint management system, we did not have many options, and we went through several things we looked at, including maybe building something ourselves. And then at the last minute, we found MyVOP, which is actually public stuff. It's made by Excella, which they also make the software that our planning and inspections department uses. But they make this, it's a citizen-based CRM package. And for the price, it did everything we wanted, including the SLAs, so that when these tickets go in, we can say, hey, this needs to be resolved in 2 days or 3 days or whatever it requires for that type of ticket. It follows through, there's a workflow, it notifies everybody involved. It even comes back and says, hey, you're late on this, please get it fixed quickly. We haven't had hardly any complaints that I know of, and it's used quite a bit.
I'll add, I've used 2 other systems in other places, and this is the most customizable. I feel like it works the best out of all of them that I've seen.
Suspicion, and is admittedly anecdotal, that a larger problem is the number of people who don't know this exists. And they have, you see this on Nextdoor all the time. They have some issue, for some reason, they go out to the community on Nextdoor, they don't call anyone at the village, they don't email any of us. And they have about 70% of the information right, and the other 30% they're missing, and there's a much easier way to get this resolved, but for all those people live streaming this or what have you, use the system, because it actually doesn't work.
Yeah. For almost everything, like NAC meetings, it's like, well, submit it through MyVOP, and that takes care of almost everything. And very quickly, because we get the information and we're on the clock to get it done.
I'm not sure what more we can do to publicize it that we haven't already thought of, but whatever we can think of would be useful.
Well, we have newcomers all the time. moving to this community. So for those folks, hopefully their appetite is whet when they hear about it. And I do think, obviously, you got much more to go through, but this is the type of presentation that the NAC would find useful to know, because it would reinforce the idea that, hey, people are using this, and you should encourage them if they're not.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think it's great. I've used it a number of times. I mean,
Yeah, it's on my phone.
like the broken branch downtown, that was kind of hanging over the road and you couldn't see it right away, but I think Janet put it in and a couple days later, the branch was gone. I mean, things like that are very useful. As you look through it, and you can scan what's open, what's not open, there's a lot of garbage can,
Right.
stuff, and once in a while, the unkept lawn and so forth and so on. But it's really a great document. I think a really great application. I think it works terrific. I would say, though, that with regards to the issues we've heard about short-term rentals, unfortunately, we got to bring up short-term rentals again. It doesn't lend itself towards, number one, it's not meant to be a transaction-based, I observed an event or an action or something happening. It's not meant to be the real-time type of reporting document. People may not understand that. The second, it's not really it doesn't have a category related to short-term rental that I could find that makes sense. As I went through all the different categories of types of things you can enter, maybe it's time to think through, maybe there's a category that needs a revision relative to housing or nearby housing, or, I don't want the housing police to be, on board with this, but it just seems like there ought to be a way for people who are concerned about that issue to be able to use this application a little bit more readily.
Right, and I had asked Doug whether those complaints go under some other category, and similarly noise complaints, because I didn't see that specifically listed, and I would have thought that might have been there.
Yeah,
It could be noise, it could be something else, who knows?
Right, but do we collect them, do we not? And-
So we categorize our complaints in my VOP based on the nature of the complaint, not on the nature of the property from which it originates. And we thought about that question as we heard comments come in from the community as we were developing the language of the ordinance that was adopted for, ordinances that were adopted for short-term rentals. And we continued to come back to just the reality that there's no way for us to know for sure whether or not a complaint is actually being made about a short-term rental property.
Right.
Sometimes people will identify that it's a short-term rental. Most of the time, when they make that designation, I would hope that they're probably right, but sometimes they're not. And in many other cases, I would expect that people make complaints about a short-term rental property, and they don't identify it as a short-term rental property. And so there's no real way to collect the information in a relevant way that we can rely on and think that it's an accurate reflection of what's going on.
Yeah, I agree with what Jeff said. We do have the ability to customize it any way we want, so that is there. But yeah, how do you effectively do that? I think Jeff brings up some good points that makes that very difficult.
There may be a point.
With regard to the actual ordinance language associated, the PDO language, the zoning language associated with short-term rentals, we could, I guess theoretically, that language could be, that zoning provision could be a separate category of a complaint in my VOP, under the zoning umbrella. But that's really not, those complaints, other than the occupancy complaint and the question about whether or not it existed.
Before October, yeah.
Most of the complaints are about garbage cans and noise, and
Yeah, sure.
it goes back to that issue of it's the type of complaint, not the property from which the complaint is originating.
Well, in some sense, a noise complaint, it's largely irrelevant whether it is or is not an STR.
Right, in
It's a
theory,
noise
yeah.
complaint.
Yeah.
It doesn't lend itself to complaints about noise or events, something that's happening right that minute, it lends itself more to something you want addressed over, next day or two or three or maybe a week or whatever.
If it needs immediate response, you need to call dispatch.
Yet at the same time, if we're touting it as a way to communicate to the village issues that concern you, maybe it should have a category that allows people to, not that you're going to change anything today or tomorrow or anything like that, but maybe something you need to look at.
Or, Jack, maybe if someone complains about a particular address, if that address has been issued a non-conforming use certificate, it's not absolutely correct, because there's people who don't have those certificates, but it culls down a little the issue. Okay, if we've got, so again, we have to find a way to fine tune that, because you can easily have false positives, but nonetheless, it is a way of shaping the universe so that we're not off on a tangent.
You're right, you could, if we wanted to maintain that type of database, but you're still left with the fact that you're only actually capturing observations and complaints and other things associated with probably about half, right, of the short-term rental properties out there. And so what are we actually learning from it? I don't.
With the-
And
I
and
think
what are you trying to do with it?
the broader issue, which is beyond the scope of this discussion, is enforcement. If I send in a complaint and nothing happens, I feel frustrated. Or the second, which was the one that Jeff Heinz raised in the NAC, is exposing yourself to anonymous, that's a separate issue.
Separate issue.
But it plays into people's willingness to use the system.
Yeah.
And therefore, for us to have a good sense as to what is actually happening.
Yeah, I suppose it does actually have categories that you could talk to, someone who's concerned about a building, whether it's being used a certain way or being used inappropriately. I mean, one, there's building services, and there's code compliance issues, you can enter stuff
Yeah,
there.
I've seen most of it put into
But the
other
trouble with code
planning.
compliance, you
Planning,
get
yeah.
signs,
It's
vehicles.
just a
I
big
mean,
catch-all, I think.
After that, it narrows it down to those things that we've predefined, other code compliance issues and so forth. I don't know, it just seems like we're getting a lot of people saying that it's difficult to use for that particular function. In other words, they're concerned about the house down the street is being used inappropriately or something like that. Whether or not this is the right vehicle or not, I'm not sure. Probably not.
We can explore that if there is a category to, I don't know what you'd call it, STR, like
Yeah.
possibility, but
It's a subcategory under code compliance or building issues or something like that. I don't want to force the issue or anything like that, because I think it's a wonderful tool the way it is, to tell you the truth.
So we have a couple things that are going on here that I'm seeing. One is we're going to get into the privacy settings, which is a lot of the meat of the matter here, certainly from that, and we need to address that and see from there. The second thing that I'm hearing is basically compliance for STRs. And my VOP, I concur with you, is not the best route for compliance with STRs, okay? All right, and then on there, for a variety of reasons. So I suggest we attack what we can attack here and get the privacy settings and or talk about that and see if there's anything we need to do.
That may go a good ways down the road to satisfy some folks.
Yes.
There's a broader discussion on enforcement beyond the scope of my VOP also, so I agree with that.
so, yeah, moving on to the privacy. So this
Yeah.
is a screenshot of what we can and can't do with privacy. So until last week, most of them had this as yes and the rest as no. So display the request type to the public, yes, that is for all of them. What we did recently was allow residents to mark private, yes. So before, if you entered something, it had to be public. It was, you could see it on the map, you could see it on the list. We just barely changed it so that you could mark it private, so it would not show up on the map or the list, and no one would be able to see it, and so no one would therefore be able to comment on it.
And private means only staff can.
So, yep, it would be between the submitter and the VOP staff.
But I have to opt into, I have to affirmatively make that
Opt in.
decision when I'm reporting
When
something.
you report it, the last button is a toggle on and off, like private, public.
It's not the default option.
It's not the default.
But that's progress.
Yep. So that is what we have the ability to do. So we cannot turn off the comments because that's how the VOP staff talks to the submitter, so that's not a possibility. Comments can be deleted, and we can actually even mute commentors, but we get into a slippery slope with, First Amendment things. Do we want to turn off some people and not others? That could raise some additional problems.
If I understood the complaint that was raised at NAC, it is that if I happen to be prowling my VOP and I see a comment, I see a filing, I can comment on that anonymously in any way I choose. And unless staff happens to catch that and shut me off,
Yeah.
there's,
That's correct.
so I guess I would turn the question around and say, what are our capabilities to require that I put an email address in or a name, or did I identify myself and therefore maybe mute my willingness to?
Right, so we require that you put in a name and an email address, but people make up fake emails and names. So yes, the names on there are completely false. They're like the letter N.
Right. For example, one of the examples that's been shared by a member of the community, actually, there was an entry. There's an entry for the identification of the person, but it's just it's not a name.
Yeah, so
That's what they filled out, that field,
Yeah.
where we require them to identify themselves.
So I could take a random character.
It's like a username, it's
Really, the only way to keep that hidden was to put the request in as private.
Or alternatively, to require all users to be registered so that if I'm not a registered user,
but I mean,
may have-
That's
that is what we
onerous.
do, but people just make up fake registries.
and just from a staffing standpoint, the amount of time that it would take for us to effectively police that
Yeah, we don't.
is probably a non-starter.
Yeah, I like the solution of if a resident doesn't want anyone to comment on it, they can just make it private.
Right.
Yeah, no,
They're in
I think-
control of their own destiny.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good
If
half
they're
step.
concerned about that outcome, then mark it private.
Agreed.
I think we have a good solution to the issue that was raised at the NAC. I think we need to get back to them and walk them through this, and then they can then share that with their communities so that it's not a secret. And I bet it'll go a long way to solving the privacy issue that was,
Just to ask the question, what would the drawback be to making the default setting private, and I have to opt to make it public?
That it doesn't exist, that is
Sorry?
that option doesn't exist. So it is a toggle on and off. So when you get onto it, it automatically has it on the public side. You have to click it to go to the private side.
We can't change that toggle.
I
The
like
other
the
thing
fact
is,
that-
I think
I like
that
the fact that
ultimately,
it's
we want
public.
this platform to look valuable to the public. And if we're hiding everything that's submitted, they're going to say, what's the benefit of this?
No, I'm not saying there aren't arguments, I'm just trying to understand what they are and
Well, I
what our
think
capabilities are, and apparently we don't have the capability anyway, so it's kind of
Yeah.
academic.
And when you're looking at it, it's one of the three things that you have to mark. So you will notice it. It's not like it's in the
No, it's
the
a
footnotes.
good solution, and because you don't want to destroy the valuable tool we have in any way, shape, or form, yeah.
The only time I know it's a problem is after I've submitted it publicly and then something, and now it's too late for me to go back, but.
Oh, that's a whoops, and what can I tell you? Yeah.
I agree, it's a good solution. Let's move forward with that.
I was.
How do we
good
publicize
solution.
this so people know?
well, I think, one, we need to definitely take it up at the next NAC meeting where it's appropriate. Doesn't have to be the very next one, but the sooner the better. And then we should also put it, obviously display it on our website so people become familiar with that. And certainly if they're signing on for the first time to MyVOP, they ought to be aware that there's a way to protect the privacy setting.
Yeah, we can put some information.
So put
out.
together some plan that's, sort of
Yeah.
touches all,
And this is not
Corners.
a user setting. I have to opt for this every time I submit something.
that's a good reminder. It's a good reminder.
It's a good, responsible solution.
Yeah. I
I'll
appreciate,
say your statistics are good. I like your statistics. Didn't like the fact that you categorized them all as complaints.
Well, it does say, is this a complaint or a service request? Why can't it kind of just be a comment? Yeah.
That's a can of worms there anyway, but,
Yeah, I know.
A report.
obviously, as you look at the numbers here, I mean, garbage cans and return pickups
Are by
they're-
far and
that's it.
away, yeah.
That's- They're off the charts.
Always is.
But, there is if that's our biggest area of concern among our residents, that's much better than the alternatives of reporting a dead animal and some of these other categories.
Yeah, but I think the return pickup's very important. I mean,
I do.
sometimes something happens, you get your bucket out late or something like that happens, and you request the village come again and do a pickup. I think that's incredibly user-friendly and responsive to the community, to tell you the truth.
Doug, I'm looking at your page entitled Consolidated Complaints, MyVOP, FY 2023, and then underneath it, FY 2023, and in parens, FY 2022 comparison. And then when I look at the chart, the only thing I see is FY 2022. I can't be sure, I'm not sure what I'm comparing. In the
I mean,
email you sent back out.
the one today?
Move up a little there. Well, that's 2023. That's 2024.
Yeah, so this is what was included in the
Original.
original one. So the orange color is the 24 number, and then the 23 number is in yellow here.
And both are
Through
to
the
date for each year, right?
Yeah, so for the first 3 quarters of the year.
Okay.
So we
the-
had a lot more Parks and Greenway complaints this year than in '23. Comments, yep, comments.
One of the remarkable things is that the time needed to address the complaints is very high. I mean, we were very responsive. If you look at the last column, I mean, it's 95, 98, everything is pretty close to 100 or batting up against that. So it's very good news. I don't know, as far as a metric, we've got a metric.
That's the client-focused.
Yeah, it's good news.
And it's largely because of MyVOP, because it automates all this stuff for us.
Right. And people who see their MyVOP request fixed become cheerleaders. They're advocates. If they've put in a pothole, they put in something, and then in the next 24 hours or something, it's corrected. I mean, they talk about it, and so they're the best advertisement for this. I would like to see more people utilizing it, but we'll have to address that. Maybe the NAC can get a little more engaged. And
Do contractors use it often for, inspection requests? I mean, I know it's
Is
available.
this how they do it usually, or they do it through Excella?
So,
we used to use this for those requests before. We have the Excella online system now.
Oh, that's right, okay.
Most of them come in through the ACA portal.
So it's been superseded to an extent, okay.
I was curious about the police category, because those things seem to be the sort of things that you can't address retroactively. I mean, but speeding, I saw a car go 50 miles an hour in front of my house. Well, that's great. What are the police supposed to do about that?
I think they're more general about they're making an observation about a pattern of speeding that they're concerned about.
So if
And
you,
then what happens, excuse me, then what happens is you end up with, like, last Sunday down on Monticello, you have there was a number of complaints apparently, and the police kind of staked it out, if you will, and gets to be known that you won't speed here anymore. So, with enough-
I just wondered, where would a complaint about an STR that appears to be operating illegally, where would that end up in terms of category?
Right, so the submitter selects the category, so they could potentially put that under code enforcement, or like this other code compliance issues, that's where I've seen a lot of them go.
Or it could be under zoning and planning.
Yes, it could be there.
Yeah, there's very few there, which could be very few.
One that I've seen more recently are complaints about your neighbor's lighting. I didn't take the time to look, do we have a category to report that?
So this is not all of them, so I'd have to double check, but I don't recall a
There's not
lighting
one
specific
specific for
one.
lighting, no.
I think it would be
Other code
other
compliance.
code, yeah.
It looked like the earlier numbers, that year over year, the total numbers are about 2,800. Seems to be rather consistent.
Yeah,
And as a coincidence, or I was looking at the 2 years totals that you showed us, 22 and 23, and in 24, 3/4 of the year, that looks like you could bet on it's going to end up being about 28.
yeah, probably trending a little higher in '24, but yeah, fairly consistent.
Okay.
These are all coming through MyVOP. So other complaints that come in through other channels, how are they accounted for? And how do they compare to these?
Actually, if someone calls the front desk, we will put that in the system for them. We try. In most cases, I'm not saying everyone makes it, but we try to do that. So, unless it's police and it's handled differently, they have
That's
their own
also true for
software.
our code enforcement officers.
Yeah. So
If they
yeah,
call, our staff will manually put it into my VOP to track it.
Thank you for bringing that up. That's, when we talk to the NAC, we should remind them of that also. So they don't think they only have one shot at this. I have a couple. All right, does anybody have any other thoughts or questions other than we'd like to, maybe after FY '24 is closed out, we could look at the 3 years and then take it up to the NAC in the fall. The privacy setting one, we can address, I think, sooner.
yep, we can
Because that was,
yeah, we could put out information on that immediately. I believe actually in the minutes of the NAC meeting, Kristen pointed out that we made that change, so.
okay, well, let's reinforce it.
Worth a follow-up again.
Yeah.
I think the only observation I would make is that this seems to be very incident-oriented. And some of the things that we're dealing with, well, many of them around STRs are also issue-oriented, but many of them are tracking-oriented or are a little bit more than.
Status.
Yes. And so I can see that the system doesn't really support us getting to that information.
Yeah.
Maybe an issue as we get into the budget.
Yeah.
Why not? We don't know.
Yeah.
We're going to find out.
All right, any other comments before we bring to closure? Other business? I'll ask, I'm going to check myself.
guys.
I ask others to raise any other issues they may want to raise. Jack, anything you want to touch? You said enough? Okay. It's tough solving both the comprehensive land plan and the PDO in just a week. Barb?
Nothing further.
Okay, John?
I'm fine for now.
Dr. Morgan? Okay. What I did when I was as you were all talking, I was thinking about how we have addressed, at least put in motion, two major things that we have a responsibility to undertake. One, the comp plan review, and then the PDO. Neither of which are very easy, neither of which are going to be finished next week. But I very much appreciate these early discussions on them, because now I've got a degree of confidence that we have a roadmap that we can address. And so I thank staff and my colleagues for putting things like that on the agenda. And I also think we've, in a timely way, aside from the U.S. Open plans, which we have to continually update, which was well done by Doug, I do think the discussion on my VOP is also responsive to the Neighborhood Advisory Committee gathering. And I think it's important for us as a council to be responsive to them in a timely way. So again, I thank everybody for their teamwork on that. So with that, I will entertain a motion.
Just one quick question.
Go right ahead.
We adopted last meeting a revised plan for updating the comp plan. And if I recall, that specifies that that's to be looked at in odd-numbered years.
Well, it can be looked at anytime. I
Right.
mean, if we feel that there's changes, but yes, it has the odd number of years in the fall, as I recall, yep.
I don't remember, is that fiscal year or calendar year?
And 4 years was the major redo, is that right?
Calendar years.
So we would not plan on necessarily anything this year, that would be a next calendar year issue, unless
Unless there's an issue.
circumstances
okay.
change, right? Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
I
And
think,
it's every 4 years, we talked about that.
right, I think the document that I distributed indicated that there isn't any pressing reason to make any changes at this point in time, other than if we really were compelled to bring it up to date, so to speak, which isn't really necessary.
Okay. Anything else, John?
Nope.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion adjourned.
Second.
Motion adopted. Thank you. Good night.